All right. Welcome to EIPIP meeting 36. I have shared the agenda in the chat, and the first item on the agenda is evolving EIP process. So we have been discussing this from the past few meetings, and I wanted to bring it up to this meeting, particularly as an agenda item, so we can discuss how we are looking into the changes that can be expected with the merge and like future upgrades. So like client, if you would like to go ahead and share your thoughts on it.
Sure. So we originally got this idea from kind of how East2 has been handling discussing core changes, and it feels like the way they do it, they're able to kind of create just a diff against their spec. Since they have this executable Pi spec, it's easy to write some code that actually implements a feature that's being discussed, and then people can focus on discussing like the actual mechanics of that. Whereas for ETH1 right now, if we want to propose a core change, we need to write a full EIP, and that EIP almost always has to redefine a lot of things in the system just to build the scene and be a complete spec. I think 1559 is a good example of something that basically implements a non-working Ethereum client just to show the things that it's trying to change. And that's kind of like where our motivation came from, just seeing how things are not working as well for ETH1 and how they've been successful in ETH2. So we've been working on this Pi spec for about a month now. And the goal of that is to be a complete implementation of Ethereum in Python and be of a format that's very readable, very modifiable, something that's doesn't require a lot, over engineering. It's not very Pythonic. It's just focused on being incredibly clear and concise. And it's not really clear to us how to go from having that spec to like enforcing it as this thing that drives forward core changes. So I'm curious if people have thoughts around that. I don't think that EIPs or like the concept of them will go away, because I think that there is a lot of value in a lot of the pros that goes into an EIP. Just defining like, why do we want to make this change? What's the rationale for these things? To me, this is, really replacing the specification part, because to me, the specification part is where we're creating like a lot of duplication. So yeah, if anyone has thoughts on paths to requiring EIPs have diffs against this spec, be curious.
My personal preference for those that are new or just tuning in for the first time, I'll repeat it. My personal preference is that we just have PRs against the spec, and those PRs would include the motivation, rationale, stuff like that. I know a lot of people disagree with me on this. I believe that motivation, rationale, etc., is transient, for lack of a better word. Like it's not something that needs to survive forever. Like we don't need to, have a permanent record of why it was decided that we added chain ID to the specification 4 years ago or whatever it was. That being said, I have no problem with storing that information somewhere, but I don't think it needs to be like in version control. I think it's fine if that's just like on a docs site or in a HackMD article or in a blog or something like that. Like I feel like, or in a YouTube video or a peep and eep type video where someone talks about it. Like I think those are all very reasonable places to store motivation and reasoning for things. I think the spec is the piece that must be stored in version control system and have history and like be easy to diff, be easy to see the change set, stuff like that. So my preference, just put all the other stuff that's not the spec itself into the PR, and then it's okay if that kind of goes away over time.
I think like one interesting model that we could learn from is how Rust does RFCs against the language. They seem to be similar to EIPs in a lot of ways. They have these things like summary and motivation, and talk a little bit about how did they come up with this idea, and then they link to GitHub PRs and issues at the top that either like implement these or are places that a lot of discussion happens on those. So I tend to agree that I don't think EIPs necessarily, like the text around it, are things that have to be version controlled and live forever. But I do appreciate the ease at which you can find this stuff. Like if I'm curious about some certain feature in Rust, it's really simple for me to pull up the RFC, and then I can immediately just read like a brief summary. And these are things that are like kind of informal. They're not really, really long things. They're generally just really quick summaries and like motivating reasonings. And then it links out to these places, these GitHub places where I can see, okay, here's where like a lot of discussion happened. These are kind of the entry points. And so that might be an interesting way. I think it like kind of removes, it avoids fully removing this idea of EIPs. Like, I'm not sure how a lot of people feel about that. I'm afraid that a lot of people will say, oh, well, we like EIPs. That's what Ethereum is. And here, at least we get to keep
That
those.
is exactly what they'll say.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
I'd be curious to, unfortunately, the problem is it's just a different format than we have EIPs already. Like, it's a lot more informal. It really just focuses on linking to these GitHub things. And so, yeah, anytime we make a big change to the EIPs repo, it's not clear how to retroactively apply stuff, or if they should be retroactively applied at all.
So on the thought of removing the idea of EIP like completely, I mean, maybe I am in the camp that I would say that let it be there for some more time. It's really helpful for new people. Like, I'll consider myself to be relatively very new, who is trying to understand the process and read about these proposals. While doing my research, like earlier when I learned about EIPs and proposals, there were different categories. I got it from EIP1 and started reading about it, doing my research. But while my research, I came to know that there was EIP4, which was actually superseded by EIP1. And there we get all these types and categories. So if we find the history, that would help us connect the dot. So maybe we can keep the history, but the template, how we store it, could be different. Maybe in the, if we say, for example, if we want to keep it in HackMD, let it be like its .md file is also not bad. Maybe we can change in the template of EIPs and move the technical part directly as a pull request and keep the other content, the relevant, the text part in this HackMD or maybe .md file. That could be something that we can think of.
Another idea, if we want to do a slow transition, like we don't want to just go all in, we could just keep the EIPs as they are and just change so that the specification section now just needs to link to a PR against the specs repo, and that's it. And anything else in the specification section is invalid, and that's just the entire specification section. Everything else stays the same. Now, that would be a very easy transition. It would I don't think anyone would really disagree with that strongly. It's nice and simple, and make sure that we're keeping the specs repo up to date, and it gets people used to doing stuff to the specs repo, but it's non-contentious. I'm not a huge fan of it just because like I would like to do a bigger change, but I understand the value in taking the wins we can get, and that might be the only win we can get.
Yeah.
Sorry, go ahead. Yeah, Micah mentioned that takes away the contention, but that just pushes it over to whoever accepts that pull request into the spec, right?
Oh, sorry, I meant that it takes away the contention of changing the EIP process is all. Like it's a small change to the process itself, which is unlikely to get a lot of negative pushback. Whereas if we tried to do what I would like, I suspect, like Matt indicated, everybody's going to disagree with it, and we might gain nothing by trying to do too much at once.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I'm in very much agreement with Micah's proposal about having the spec section submitted as a pull request, and that's how we make changes. So like this idea looks good to me. But yeah, obviously, I'll be curious to know what other people think.
So that would be a pull request against a Python spec, running Python spec, which doesn't exist. That would depend on that existing, right? Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah, Light Client is already working on that right now. And I have shared the pull request that is submitted to eth1.os spec repository.
Okay.
So there was this another idea of like when we are talking about network upgrade and network upgrade process, there was another thought around kind of differentiating the category of the proposals, right? So there are proposals for protocol changes and there are some for feature changes. Is there any particular thought on like how to deal with that? Because it was brought into attention, like it sometimes it's take times for any change that is dependent upon an upgrade to come and include that improvement proposal. And by the time we are on the upgrade, that proposal may have been superseded by something else or may not be valid or something else came up. So is there a way we can deal with this kind of situation? What do people think generally?
Are you referring to like the debate on EAP 3074 and
Yeah, and account abstraction. Yeah.
yeah. I mean, I still am like very much in the camp that there just needs to be a little bit more leadership at the core layer in terms of I know that's a crazy thing to say, but and you know it's not like
That
I'm
is
not
ridiculous.
Yeah,
I'm not
what do you mean
asking
by more leadership? What
I'm
does
not
that mean?
asking for like a dictator or something to say this is what Ethereum is because I say it is. I think that there are already like informal leaders who have ideas of things that we should be doing and working for. And I think like Vitalik has been a great leader of Ethereum. He generally has a list of things that he thinks is important for the protocol to do. And we kind of like see those things manifest as time goes on. Like we are seeing him talk about these things like extending the address space to 32 bytes, state expiry. These are all things that are kind of on his list. And I think it would be good if we had people, a working group who spent time and tried to like build out saying this is the like kind of informal path for Ethereum. And here's like how we kind of like want this roadmap to happen, because otherwise you end up with teams like Quilt working on this idea EIP 3074, which is a very useful change to make to the protocol right now. And then I don't want to say blindsided, but we didn't really take into account these things that were like theoretically on the roadmap 5 to 10 years in the future, like quantum resistance and fully removing EOAs. And so now we're kind of in this deadlock where until someone actually does some research and thinks about, well, how can we move away from EOAs and actually have smart contracts in the protocol? Maybe how could we move away from this SEC P256K1 curve? There's nothing that we can really do because people can always just kind of like sit back and say, oh, there's these changes in the future that may not be compatible. So I think that if we had a little bit more leadership and have a little bit more responsibility delegated to people for like certain areas, as in, you are kind of the people who are in charge of looking into these types of things, improving the UX of Ethereum, improving state of Ethereum. And we like informally have a lot of this stuff, but it's not, nothing is defined. There's zero structure around these things.
Yeah, I think that is what we can do as a group here in this EIPIP meeting, like can define a structure. I was looking into like older proposals and I found that the abstraction of transaction that was originally written by Vitalik, that is also still in draft status right now. So there are these are important proposals. These are good proposals, but they get lost maybe because we do not have a process defined for how to deal with these kind of proposals. Similar thing was also there for some of the networking layer proposals. Proposals are implemented, they are being deployed in a client and they are being used, but they are still in like older status. I mean, maybe because the author forgot to create a pull request, but I believe sometimes it is included in upgrade and sometimes it is not. So that's a lot of confusion around these proposals. And that's fine. But as a group, I'm thinking if we can do something about it or maybe can define, because we have like great minds here, all the EIP editors and people who are actually involved into processes are here. So can we think of something?
It's a very hard problem. This has been solved in traditional business, but the way it's solved is a way that kind of goes against the spirit of Ethereum, which is why that same solution doesn't work. Like in a traditional company, you would just have.
When you say it solved this business, you mean hierarchical business. The guy at the top makes a decision and everyone gets in line, right?
Yes, like in a very simplified version. Usually there's a lot more delegation involved. So you have someone at the top who is doing very broad strokes directions. Then you
hierarchical.
Yeah, it's definitely hierarchical. And then,
and if there's disagreement, people go to the next level and the next level solves the disagreement.
Yeah, so if you get into a deadlock specifically, you can escalate up and have somebody call. And even if that person doesn't have actual authority, like the structure is flat, just having a tiebreaker, like having someone who just makes a call often is very valuable. Doesn't even matter what the call is more often than not. Like you just have a business decision that needs to be made. It doesn't actually matter what decision is made. It just a decision needs to be made. And Ethereum struggles with making decisions. We saw this with Prog Proof of Work. It's like the canonical example of not being able to make a decision and resulting in massive amounts of engineering waste because just because we couldn't actually decide on what to do.
Yep.
Whereas in a traditional company, you'd have someone would have made a call, like, long before you spend thousands of engineering hours on both sides, someone would have just been like, we're doing this or we're not doing this.
Yep.
That's it. Doesn't even matter. Like, again, it doesn't actually matter whether you do it or not. What matters is that a decision is made. That is more important.
Yep.
So I think to cut myself off, I think the solution we need is a way to make decisions on contentious topics that isn't just like do nothing. Like do nothing is currently the strategy for resolving contention.
So if you had a petition system, say we want to, let's pick something controversial like recover some funds, hundreds of millions of dollars of funds lost in a wallet, and you build up a petition that describes the change that's going to happen, and then you start getting people signing. Vitalik says, yes, I support this, and other people start supporting that. And then we have, of course, a ton of people that dislike that, and so they create a competing camp, and people also sign and support. But anyway, bottom line, you guys recognize I'm just talking about Canada.
We tried this.
That's all decided.
Yeah.
Tried
we tried this before in the past with like the DAO fork, for example. People tried all sorts of polls and just like sentiment analysis.
The poll is completely opposite of what Canonizer. All a poll does is measure disagreement. And Canonizer is completely different than that.
So the issue often is that we get into a stalemate where everybody knows what everybody else's position is, like at least within the core devs. Like there's definitely within the community, there is lots of misinformation and lots of uncertainty and lots of understanding. Yep. Within the core devs, at least, we can usually get to a place where everybody understands everybody else's position. There's just like, there's some core premise that people just fundamentally agree on, like some like kind of root belief system. Sometimes it's a belief system. Sometimes it's just like a disagreement in style, like just I was raised this way and this was more comfortable for me versus I was raised this way and this is more comfortable for me.
Yep.
Those are the ones that I think we really struggle with, is when it's not that we don't understand each other's positions. It's that we find where we disagree and then we just get stuck and we don't have like both sides. And I say this all the time in the core devs call where both sides recognize each other's position. And it's just someone just needs to make a call like that. That's all. Like there's no, like we can eventually get to that point of understanding. We just can't actually get past it.
Right, but there's no formal way to track. Both sides claim there's so many people that are going to do this, we're going to fork. But that's obviously, they have no clue how many people are really on that side.
Oh, yeah.
There's no rigorous measure of and you can never track if arguments. all that needs to be
So,
rigorously measured. So if you can see that 75% of all of the core devs and everyone are clearly on board, and the noisy people that are against it and saying there's going to be a fork, if you can see that, then making those decisions it can become a decision if you see 75% of people are on board and 25% of people aren't, versus everyone just polarizing, says there's going to be a fork and yelling there's going to be a fork if you do this.
I don't think the core devs actually listen that much to people who yell and scream fork. I think there are a few core devs who do, but the impression I get is that most of them are pretty ambivalent. Like, most of them seem to be in the general camp of forks are an acceptable form of governance. If two groups disagree strongly enough, forking is the appropriate way to deal with that situation, and that's okay. There's definitely people in the community that disagree very strongly with this. Like, they do not think forks should ever.
Yeah, we'll never accomplish anything if we're constantly forking into smaller fiefdoms.
So I think the idea is that in most cases people aren't willing to fork over a thing. Like, you have to be pretty big and significant. Like, the DAO was an example of a significant enough disagreement that caused an actual fork. For pretty much everything else, it's not enough to fork over. Like ProgPow, as an example, I don't think whichever way it went, people would have actually forked over it. Like, I think people complained and claimed they would, but I think in the end, like, as we saw, at least with the way it went, people didn't fork despite threatening to, and vice versa. I think if we would have implemented it, I don't think it would have actually forked.
Are we going to fork
because
50,
people just
59?
Prog brings in an
I
interesting
doubt it.
mechanic also, because contentious forks that involve something that's perceived as an economic blow to miners further incentivizes a fork. So even if, like, the community at large might not support it, the mining community might, I wouldn't say arbitrarily, but I would say the mining community is capable of making a decision that's largely independent of the rest of the ecosystem sentiment, if they feel like they're defending their own holdings. So I know Prague gets a bit funny that way. I'm trying to predict exactly what would have happened. But I do agree with all of your points there.
When I say fork, I specifically mean a fork where there are actual users on both sides of the chain. A fork where it's just a bunch of miners who just go off and do their own thing and no one actually uses it. That happens every single time we have a hard fork. There are miners who just forget.
Okay.
Yeah, every hard fork, there are miners who forget to upgrade, and they just keep mining the old chain for quite a while sometimes. Like, that is very normal. And what specifically a contentious fork, I think of, like, ETC is the only one that Ethereum's had.
I understand.
You actually have a significant user base that exits with, not just miners trying to sell their tokens or whatever.
Yeah, I understand your point.
So that also brings me to a point where I wanted to bring it up about the fork identifier, right? That is, this proposal is a network layer proposal, and I know that is already implemented in Geth. So someone please help me understand that. So I have not complete understanding of if it is implemented in all the clients or just Geth only. I know for sure that it is there in the Geth, but is it helping miners, like getting on the right chain, if that is included with the latest version of Geth when it is ready for any network upgrade?
Do you have a link to what you're referring to?
Yeah, just give me a second. I will share the link here. It's EIP 2124, and I'm sharing it right here. So the proposal is in the last call. We had invited the author to explain about the proposal, and there is a very good video on PEEP and EIPIP about this proposal, explaining how it is going to help identify the right chain, because they don't have just chain ID, they also provide identifier for every upgrade. So that may be very helpful for miners to find the correct one.
I see. No, so this wouldn't help with miners forking off during every hard fork. This is basically just to the way the gossip network works. You basically just kind of broadcast out and talk to everybody, and you try to find people that are on the same chain as you. it would be, I think, if I understand it correctly, they're basically just trying to make it so you can segregate. And so when you open up a channel to talk to somebody, you can very quickly identify, oh, you're not the person I'm interested in talking to. I want to talk to because I'm, following this other fork than you are. So that way, if something like ETH, ETC happens, you don't have people, still gossiping with each other. It's just basically, it's a network bandwidth saving thing, more or less, performance improvement. I don't think it'll have any visible effect on the ecosystem, if I'm understanding it correctly. Also, the simple summary is too long.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. So I was wondering, like, if there is any such proposal which are there for improvement of network layer. They are generally, I have not seen most of them in upgrades. I was going through the history of upgrades and looking into the proposals. I found one, I think there was one EIP 8 that was accepted in Homestead. But other than that, no other proposals are there. If I followed all of them, then so
So I think there's two reasons for that. One, network changes are actually pretty rare. We don't change the network protocol very often. And two, they can kind of because they're versioned and the clients can be on different versions. It's not actually critically necessary for everybody to like come to agreement like it is for core EIPs. And so like usually it's Felix and the Geth team who talks about something, they propose an EIP, and then you'll see there actually are a handful of network EIPs. It's just like because they don't need to go to final, they usually just get forgotten once they get close. And so I suspect a number of these are actually maybe not. Maybe these are all fairly new.
yeah, I mean, like it would be good to have them as finals as well. Like I know there are quite a few version of like ETH 64, then we went to 65, and at present we are at 66. So we have different, we know that one is superseded by the other, right? So I think sorting them out would be
I wouldn't say superseded. Like you can have a client that speaks only 64, talk to a client that speaks 64 and 65. Geth, I believe, is actually going to drop 63 and lower soon. And then they won't be able to talk to people who are not on 64 or higher, if I remember correctly. So we definitely should get ETH 64 and ETH 65 out of draft. Like they should be final, I think, because I think they're in production now.
right. And same for 66, that is there in the review for a while.
I don't know, does anyone know if 66 has been deployed?
I'm pretty sure it's in Geth Master.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure Geth has it released.
Okay.
And they're slowly deprecating 64 and 65. Or they've announced sometime this year when they're going to stop supporting it or removing it.
Oh, is it 64 and 65 they're dropping?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
I believe so.
So we should definitely get all those merged and moved up. Talk to Felix is probably the best person to talk to. They definitely understand the protocol, and like if you wanted to just rope someone in and say, hey, here's a list of EIPs, can you tell me which of these should be moved to final? Felix would probably be the one to be able to answer that easily.
Yeah, right. I will reach out to him this week. And we'll create pull requests for at least which are in like draft and they need to be moved. But for the review one, I will request author to move it. All right. So bottom line is like, I was just trying to understand for this proposals, like there are three open questions as per my understanding. Like one, are we planning to have like core proposals going the same way as it is going for now for the network upgrade, irrespective of if it is a protocol change or a feature change? Let come with the same process. And the next one was for network upgrade proposals, network layer proposals. Can we do anything about it, or it's just that we will be reaching out to author because these are not very frequent? We shouldn't be worried or bothered much about it.
I'm fine with network just following this same process as core. I think it's just a matter of they're just infrequent, and so and they don't need to follow the process. Like there's nothing forcing them to, like with all core devs. And so I think it's just a matter of, just we need to be proactive in approaching
And
the
their
offers.
inclusion in any upgrade, does it have any significance? Should we or should we not?
They're disassociated with hard forks, so they can be released by clients independent of any sort of hard fork.
Makes sense. All
So
right.
we don't need to track it for hard fork coordination or anything.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I just found only one network layer proposal which went into the first upgrade, I believe, and after that it was never there. Cool. I'll make a note of that. Thank you.
I think that one is actually, you're talking about EIP 8, right?
Right. 8.
I think it was needed before Homestead. So I don't think it was actually included with Homestead. It was just every client needs to implement this before Homestead goes live.
No, I think I saw it in the list of proposals.
Did it actually go live with Homestead?
It is there in the meta EIP for Homestead.
Okay.
I'm gonna share the link.
That was before my time. So I'll take your word for it.
All right. I think this topic might need more discussion, so we'll get back on this. Maybe in the next meeting, we'll have some more thoughts around it and try to document whatever we have discussed in this meeting, and we'll take it from there. Any question or last comment before we move on to the next item? Okay. Moving on, the next item is a new EIP ERC editors in training progress. I know we have William here on the call, and there was some discussion in the Discord channel as well. Anyone would like to give any update on how we are doing on it, or like, is there any challenge people are facing that might need attention?
My largest issue is the lack of more hours in the day currently.
Right.
Someone needs to fix that.
Yeah, if we could hard fork the day and increase the hours, I'd be in favor.
All right.
That being said, I guess on a more serious note, I have not put in very many hours this last month. I am hoping that the future does yield me a bit more time for that. There were a few things that were a bit extenuating for me this month. That being said, it is something I'm keeping an eye on. And if I see that consistently that I don't have the time to dedicate to it, I'll probably withdraw from the position and just to allow someone more productive than me in.
It's actually I would suggest that do not withdraw it yet. We need people. It doesn't matter that you're giving 1 hour or like 5 hours a day.
Yeah, just to be clear, I am still trying.
Right.
If I see that it just I would not have pretty much anything concrete I could point to from the last month, for instance. So look, if I see that is consistently the case, so I'd probably put some effort in trying to find someone else to try and come in. I can do that anyway, truth is.
Right. In the meanwhile, I was just talking to Light Client, and we were thinking of having a recording on like how editing works. Maybe I can have Micah and Light Client both on a call, maybe in an episode of PEEP and EIP where we can record how the process work and explain it. That might be helpful for new people, like what all tiny details that they might have to look into. Yeah. Any other suggestion that we can create some resources for new people getting on board?
To be honest, as weird as this sounds, Light Client, if you are open to have, I guess I don't have a better term for this than like a ride along or something like that. If you're about to do some EIPing or anything like that, that actually doesn't sound very good. And you'd be willing to have me kind of tag along or something like that.
I think that's the perfect term if you know what ride along means.
It was like one of those where I said it and then I was like, well, oops.
Maybe better context really would be pair programming.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think Pooja and I mentioned something like that. That would probably be a good thing to do. I just need to figure out, maybe we can huddle together after this call and figure out like a good time to do maybe 1 hour every week or two.
I'd love to join
Okay.
that too, actually, because it's
Oh,
something
you weren't
that
invited.
I've
I'm
just.
sorry. I'm just kidding.
It's nice.
EIP is a very private thing, Trent.
Yeah, all these open source repos are so private.
Yeah, we can, let's talk after this and find a time that works for us just to do an hour or so, a little less, a little more every week or so, and then should get our feet wet.
Right. Yeah, we were thinking about it. Like maybe, meanwhile, if we can record something on like AMA, kind of this frequently asked question that people have around, or get in touch with all these people. I know Trent, you have also volunteered to do that, and William is there, and there was another guy, I don't know. He's not in the meeting today, so we'll check with him too. And anyone else interested to generally learn how does this process work, because we would want more and more people to join. This is something that needs attention, because more like proposals are stuck because it's not being reviewed, not core proposals, they are moving faster, but for ERCs, definitely we need some more help. Maybe we can come up with something more concrete in the next meeting. All right, moving on to the next item is JSON RPC API spec progress update. I believe, Alita, you mentioned in the last meeting that you would like to go ahead and provide update every meeting about what's going on in there.
Yeah, so basically, in the past week, we have gotten through most of what I mentioned in the last issue. I guess I was too busy to fill it out for this time, but like, are there any endpoints that are particularly important for us to focus on over the next 2 weeks?
The EIP 15591 ones, if they're not done yet.
Okay. Do you know offhand what those ones are?
I wouldn't actually say the 59 ones, because right now we've got two separate implementations of the spec, and the one that's in the ETH1 specs repo has the 1559 ones and is kind of the coordination point. And I'm just like keeping those updated for now until the fork passes. But we'll transition away from that after the fork passes. So there's not like a strong need at this exact moment to get them.
Why do you think we should not use this process for London?
It was just talking with Tim. I mean, we are using this process. It's just which specs are we using? And I would rather them not like focus on the one that's Apache 2 from Ethereum Classic and focus on the CCO version.
Sorry. Yeah.
It's just that like the Apache 2 version is, not as complete as what we're going to want eventually, but good enough for client. Like we're still using it as the coordination point for clients to figure out what is going into London, but long term, like all of our work should be going towards the CCO version.
Speaking of which, that's going to be delayed probably until this weekend, because I have been very busy. So yeah, but I did promise that for today. So that's a bit of an update. But yeah, I will have PR finished, and I mean, I'm probably just gonna merge it if that's okay with you all. I mean, I guess you all can review it, but I don't know. It's gonna be a long PR, so I guess Micah likes to read long PRs, but just let me know.
Contrary to popular belief, I do not actually like reading long PRs.
But anyway, so yeah, there's like essentially if anything comes up where there's like specific endpoints that need to be doing that need doing, let me know. But otherwise, based off of what Light Client said and Micah said, I'm probably just gonna kind of prioritize based off of what is best for myself and for the person working on who's actually doing the work here, which is to mean that like they don't have, or Jared doesn't have a lot of experience yet, and so I'm trying to keep it somewhat simple to kind of like guide that learning curve. But there's a lot of progress. We've been doing things, and then there's also a major discussion right now about format, which is like kind of blocking us actually, which is a little bit frustrating because like I think it's less important than getting things out You know what I mean? Like, I think it's easier to go back and like reformat than it is to get somebody else on to do this. So it makes more sense to me to just kind of like bite the bullet until we can figure this out as far as formatting and just go with whatever we have right now. But what do you all think about that?
Momentum is hard to change. And so if we pick a format, and we want to change it later, I worry that it will be difficult to actually make that change. As we've seen with the IP process, we struggle to change it because people are used to one way, and then it's very hard to convince them that something else will improve their experience if they just get over the hump of adjusting.
Okay, so maybe we'll do it internally then. I really don't want to slow down anything. I want to keep things moving as fast as they possibly can, because otherwise we're not going to make August deadline. We're already very much so. I mean, I already am pretty confident that we're not going to make it, but if we slow down because of the formatting thing, then we are definitely not going to. And so,
I mean, what's
You're referring
like,
to-
why are things slowing down? Why can't we just figure out the formatting and then continue on?
well, it's because until the formatting is figured out, we can't open any more PRs. And so we can't get we can't get clients reviewing. And stuff. So in other words, my point is that like the formatting is like a very high priority right now. I'm going to schedule a call with my client and Tomas for this weekend to figure this out. If anybody else is interested in being on that, please let me know and I will add you. But yeah, it's like it's essentially it's saying like we have like the raw information, but we can't deliver. And if you can't deliver, then you just have a bunch of work in progress, and then we just get to like, I don't know. I mean, it's not a very efficient like pipeline
So
that we have going on right now.
So I think it sounds like the solution is we need to resolve the formatting thing quickly. Is there anything we can do to expedite the solution?
The best thing I can think of is just this weekend, we schedule a call and get through it on that call. Like basically we just call until we figure it out. So yeah, it was supposed to be this past weekend, but I had a crisis at work and that's resolved now. So I will follow up with it, but.
I mean, is Tomas not available asynchronously at all?
I guess he is. Yeah, I can also message in Discord.
Like, if you
after
just
the call.
ask him to chat in the JSON RPC specs Discord channel, then
Yeah, I think I think he tends to be a little bit unresponsive because he's very busy. I'm not totally sure, but he tends to be a little bit slow at times, and so I don't know. I think a call would be more productive. But what I'll do is I'll do an async as well as schedule a call, just so that we hit both avenues, and then we can just cancel the call if the async works.
sounds good.
Feel free to send me a link to the meeting and time.
Sure.
Cool. So the next item is a canonical source for EIPs. I don't know, Brent, if you may have any update on.
Yeah, that's a time issue for me. I need to fork myself, but I haven't got, it's still on my list of things to do, but haven't done anything recently. So got to push it again.
Right. Do you want me to keep it on recurring meeting, or should we take it off and when you have?
Yeah,
like,
let's try it at least one more
Okay.
meeting, and I'll try and get something before the next meeting.
All right, no problems.
Thanks.
Okay. So now we are on the last item. It's review action items from the previous meeting. There are a couple of tasks that were like coming on from this meeting. I just want to quickly have like if there is any update. The one is EIP draft banner. Are we done with that task, or how is it going?
Oh yeah, this one. I have unfortunately not finished this one. I don't know. Maybe I'm gonna see if somebody else wants to do it, just because I'm like, I mean, I can do it. Like I will get to it. Kind of like what's the priority of this item? But maybe Jared could do it. I don't know. Does anyone else know CSS? Because I do have like a kind of like a rough framework for it.
I think if we can open it for community, I mean, if we have like a bandwidth issue, we should create an like issue and share it in our Discord. We have so many people from like, developers community as well who are looking to contribute. So if there is a way they can also contribute, that would help us like speed up the task. And yeah, I mean, I know you have worked on it. So if you are around, they can always reach out to you if that's okay with you.
Yeah, of course, that would be great. I think just posting a thing saying, "Hey, are you interested in this?" and then just reach out to Alita if you are, and then I can give them what I have right now. I'm sure that I'm sure it won't take that long for whoever ends up picking it up, but I am very bandwidth constrained right now, and so that's resulting in unreasonable delays.
All right, so I'll take on it. I will create an issue and share it with people on Discord and everywhere else. The next task that we discussed some times ago was board tracking inactivity period. That is issue 73. I saw Jared responding on that, but unfortunately he's not there. Wondering if you may have any update on that.
What was this again? Sorry, are you talking to me or?
Yeah. It is issue number 73. I see your comment, like you would be able to help Jared working on this task. It's about bot tracking inactivity period for eips.ethereum.org, so they can move the proposals to the appropriate status if they are no more like, in activity for a very long time and the withdrawn status or so.
So in this case, I don't know too much about what's happening right now. I do know that Jared is working on it, and I do know that he can reach out to me with questions, but I do not have a status. I think Jared has been working very hard on the JSON RPC stuff, and so it's feasible that and he's also been moving recently, and so that's feasible that he's been unable to get to it. Depending on on the priority of this, I might recommend handing off to someone else. I can, guide and train whoever, honestly. But yeah, I mean, I'm not totally sure. I think maybe follow up with Jared asynchronously to see if he's done any work on it.
Cool, no worries. I can follow up with him too. All right. I am now looking into the last meeting notes to see if we have any action items there and decisions. Number one, anything that wants to be on Ethereum standard needs to go through Ethereum GitHub repository. I believe that is related to ERC process that we discussed in the last meeting. Alita to investigate a bot exclusion to EIP1. My understanding is this is done. Alita, can you confirm that, please?
Yeah, that's done.
Thank you. EIP1 changes to only require 2 editors to approve. This is also completed, correct? I believe both are interrelated, that both are related to EIP1 only. Mark the JSON RPC API spec in ETH1O as deprecated internally until after London. I believe we discussed this today, like Client brought it up. There are some changes. And the last one is change the name of ETH1.o API's repo after London is shipped. That's a decision, no action item on anyone. All right. So that's all from the agenda item. Anyone has anything else to share with us or maybe bring it up? We made it on time.
Nice.
All right. Thank you everyone for joining today. I hope to see you all in 2 weeks on July 14th. Have a good day, evening, everyone.
Cheers.
Good job.
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
then-
thanks.